You wanted to know which planet was causing your suffering? How about Earth?
Hey everyone, BrainFlakes here, back with another Eternal Return video. For today's video, I want to talk about something easy since I've just come back from vacation and I want to ease back into it. Also recovering from a sore throat, not sure where it came from, thankfully not COVID though, so got that going for me. Today's video topic is going to be about ladder anxiety and improvement in general. Obviously, Eternal Return has made a big shift recently with squads being the main mode instead of solos, duos, and squads all being available. And if you're a new player or you're a returning player, or maybe you're even a veteran player that's trying to adjust to the new mode, I think that understanding how to deal with your anxiety about laddering or even just knowing how to improve at a more efficient and good pace for yourself is always important to know. I mostly just want to talk about ladder anxiety just because that is something that I personally run into a lot. I've never really been good at doing stressful quote-unquote activities like playing ranked games over and over again just because I personally get very invested into them. And the way I combat that, or I have combat that in the past, is simply trying to focus on improvement and focusing on myself and how I play better versus trying to win every game, if that makes sense. So hopefully this video will be a nice insight into how I deal with it, and hopefully it'll help you guys out if you have some problems with it. And if you are personally somebody who has no ladder anxiety and you think you're improving at a good rate, please feel free to leave a comment about how you deal with it yourself, just because everyone adjusts differently. And I think it'd be a lot more helpful for everyone to have another point of view. With all that said, let's just get into the actual video itself. First, I want to talk about the way that I personally approach improving in Eternal Return. When I first started the game back in Season 1, I focused really on understanding my route and understanding how to adjust my route in order to give myself the best performance possible. So obviously with squads being a thing now instead of solos, that has changed a little bit, but it hasn't changed how important your initial route is. I have already made a video about how to improve your routing, but just to TLDR it, essentially you want to make sure that you understand how to route, how to adjust that route, and where your animals are along that route. If you understand all three of these things, you'll see your early game become a lot more consistent, and hopefully that will make your games a lot easier. So once you get the early game down, you guys might find yourself being lost where your mid game is supposed to be. So really the mid game is all about adjustment. Obviously the game guides your hand a lot in the mid game with spawning objectives here and there, but the adjustment I'm talking about actually pertains to animals that spawn around the map. The most important animals you should be aware of are wolves and bears, along with the respective mutant spawns. And the reason why these are so important is because they kind of provide a more consistent method they can pivot to if your early objective contests go wrong. So obviously getting rare materials from wolves and bears aren't guaranteed, but even just playing with that chance is really important because let's say you're behind from failing a battle zone, then failing alpha, then failing trees and multiple meteors, then your only way back into the game is going to be controlling certain zones, which can be surprisingly effective once you understand how vision in the game works. You can catch a lot of teams off guard by sitting around corners or being in bushes. That can really turn a lost game into a won game. The zones that I would personally look at trying to control if you're trying to opt for this more consistent low-key playstyle is probably going to be beach and hotel, and then temple and pond, just because these zones both have a lot of wolf and bear spawns as well as a set of mutant bear spawns. So when should you be looking to adjust? Like I mentioned earlier, you should be looking to adjust around objective timings, but knowing when these line up is really important. So for example, on the start of day 2, if people have cleared the first wolf spawns on time, then all the wolves will be respawning. That means that places like hospital, archery range, and factory are probably going to be pretty good to farm, as well as hotel, just because wolves are likely to be back there. And then obviously once you farmed all those animals, you can see if you got any lucky RNG drops. If you didn't, then you continue farming, and then if you did, you just craft those instead. And then obviously if you want to venture out of that zone, that's up to you. If you want to leave the safety of the zones you control, it's never really wrong to do that, but it's just more of a matter of how confident your team is at winning. It's not really shameful to be going back to a farming playstyle just because that kind of guarantees your consistency. And in the end, consistency is the most important skill you can learn in order to have a smooth ranked climb. I think one of the hardest macro skills to learn in Eternal Return that's very undervalued is honestly how to position around third parties or how to set yourself up to be the third partier. I think the only way you're really improving this skill from a logical standpoint is to review your games where you did get third partied and see what led up to that third party and what that third party team did to catch you in that third party. I think it's a very undervalued skill that people don't really utilize, and it just adds on to the idea of consistency that I brought up earlier. So with macro out of the way, I just want to talk about micro very quickly. So obviously there's a lot of characters in Eternal Return now, way more than there were before, and veterans that play the game have had the privilege of learning them one by one as they come out. If you're a new player, obviously you're going to be very overwhelmed by how many characters there are. There's unfortunately not really a way to speedrun learning all these characters, so if you have the time and you want to learn how to play the game properly, I would say that you should either one-trick one character and then learn the game through that one character so that you can have a very firm understanding on how your character plays against all the other characters, or you can do the kind of more crazy route where you play each character and then really explore their kits, and then settle on a character after you've really tried them all out. Practice tool does exist to make this more easy, and hopefully there'll be a video out at some point, probably not by me, that will explain this in a lot more detail. I think my main form of generic advice for this game is to be confident but not too overzealous with how you play your character. If you have a good handle on what your character can do, then you can go as crazy as you want and really limit test, but if you're trying to learn the game, then you should fight. I've seen a lot of new players that kind of just like play passive and don't engage, and that's really bad because that means you never really understand what your character can do compared to others. Especially with the game becoming squads only, that means you effectively put your team at a 2v3 instead of a 3v3, which is pretty bad for pretty obvious reasons. There's not really an end-all be-all for improving micro in a turn return, especially since there's no custom maps that really put you through the grinder, which is why I'm emphasizing once again that my main tip is to simply play confidently. It's hard for me to just say, oh, just juke by clicking left and right when your opponent throws a skill shot when you don't even know what the skill shot is, and unfortunately nothing but time spent in the game will teach you what those things do. And so with all that stuff about improvement out of the way, I can finally talk about ladder anxiety. Obviously you guys know that norms exists and ladder exists, or rather ranked, and unfortunately if you're trying to improve, ranked is probably the best place to do it. Normal games in a turn return have been constantly plagued with a lot of norms farmers, which will be in your game a lot if you're trying to learn how to play, just because the population for norms is still pretty low compared to what it really should be for a healthy environment. This means that if you're playing ranked and you see like a team constantly farm you guys, and they're constantly in the game at like 30 TK, that means you're essentially playing in a gold lobby because these gold equivalent players are sitting in norms just killing new players over and over again, which is obviously something that you can't condemn these players for doing because they're just trying to have fun, but unfortunately it will stunt your growth as a player if you don't just move on to a place where you might have more fair games. Obviously ranked has its fair share of issues with smurfs and all that, but the main thing you have to conquer when you play ranked is going to be ranked anxiety if you have it. So I personally have had pretty bad ranked anxiety in every game I've played. I think TFT is actually the only one that I've played where I haven't had ranked anxiety just because it feels like I'm playing norms in that game. And if we're being honest, I have ranked anxiety even until now in this game just because I don't want to feel like I'm wasting time when I play. So the way that I've been dealing with it recently is to just queue up, because if I solo queue, might as well solo queue in a place where my game quality will be better, specifically when I'm playing characters that I know how to play. If I'm trying to mess around and play on characters like Hyunwoo or like Felix, or basically characters that I don't have really practice with, I'll go into norms if I have no intention to really push them to the limits. But if I'm playing characters like Nikki, Ava, or even stuff like Barbara, I'll go into ranked just because at that point it feels like bullying to go into norms, but also I want to make sure that I actually put that time into something good and improve that character further, because I do care about making that character better for me to play. Also, doing YouTube nowadays also really helps me with the motivation to queue into ranked, just because I think the gameplay quality and gameplay footage is a lot more interesting if I am in ranked, which is all just a long way of saying that having goals is what's solving my ranked anxiety. So obviously, ranked anxiety is unique to everybody, but maybe if you guys have a goal of, I want to be number 1 Sylvia, or I want to be number 1 W Marlene, that could be something that pushes you to play ranked. Or maybe you just want to say, I don't want to be a burden on my friends and I want to be that norms farmer in the future. That's also a totally valid reason to play ranked. Everybody has a different way of getting over anxiety, and I don't want to be the person that says do it my way. But if you guys don't have goals and you want to try and get in ranked, I would suggest setting small goals at first and then working forward, whether that's, oh, I want to make sure that I can get at least 3rd place or higher every game, or maybe you just want to prove to yourself that you can be like number 10 Leon or number 10 Adriana in NA, and then go on from there. I know that not everyone has ladder anxiety, which is why I put it in the latter half of this video, but hopefully if you do have it, I've given you guys some good ideas to kind of push forward. I do think that ladder can be very daunting, but if you're already solo queuing in norms, I do think that solo queuing in ranked can also be pretty interesting, because your game quality should be better for the most part until you get to that like plat diamond range where you're just gonna be against the top players of the region over and over again, and that's where the improvement section comes back in handy, because you're gonna have to improve fast or just be relegated to playing with the best players and kind of being slung around. I think right now is kind of the golden time to become good at eternal return squads, just because you have the chance to be exposed to so many good players, And if you take that experience and apply it correctly, you'll learn very, very quickly. And if that's something you want to do, especially in a game that's growing at the rate of Eternal Return, you should go ahead and do it. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. I know my voice is a bit different just because, again, sore throat. With that said, I'll go ahead and get back to resting. So have a good day or night wherever you are, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye bye.